The afternoon sun hung high over downtown Atlanta, turning the sidewalks into shimmering ribbons of heat. Office workers hurried past in pressed suits, delivery drivers rushed to meet impossible deadlines, and tourists snapped photos of towering glass buildings that reflected the cloudless blue sky. Everyone seemed to have somewhere important to be. Everyone, except the woman sitting quietly outside Mason's grocery market. She leaned against the brick wall beneath a faded awning, wearing a worn brown hoodie several sizes too large, and a pair of faded jeans that had clearly seen better days. Her hair was tucked beneath a gray knit cap, and although dust covered her clothes, her posture was strangely graceful. Beside her rested a small backpack and a cardboard sign written with neat, careful handwriting. "Please don't give me money. If you can, I'd appreciate a meal. God bless you." Most people never even looked at the sign. Some glanced at her before quickly looking away. Others assumed it was another trick. A businessman carrying an expensive leather briefcase muttered loudly enough for everyone nearby to hear, "These people are getting smarter every day." A pair of college students laughed as they walked past. An elderly woman reached into her purse, then hesitated after noticing everyone else ignoring the beggar. She quietly put her wallet away and continued walking. The woman simply lowered her eyes again. She had already grown used to disappointment. Across the street, 29-year-old Malik Carter wiped grease from his hands with an old blue shop towel as he locked the gate to Parker's auto repair. The day had been exhausting. 2 customers had argued over repair costs. One supplier had delayed an important shipment. His aging pickup truck had begun making a strange knocking sound on his drive to work. Worst of all, payday was still 3 days away. Malik reached into his wallet while walking toward the bus stop. One $20 bill. 3 quarters. 2 nickels. That was everything he had. He smiled to himself. Guess instant noodles are back on the menu. The smile didn't last long. As he approached the grocery store, he noticed the woman sitting quietly against the wall. She wasn't calling out to people. She wasn't shaking a cup. She wasn't pretending to cry. She simply watched families leave the store carrying bags full of groceries while unconsciously rubbing her stomach. The expression on her face wasn't desperation. It was hunger. Real hunger. Malik slowed his pace. He looked toward the entrance of the grocery store, then back at his wallet, then at the woman. He knew exactly what $20 meant to him. Gas for 3 days. Dinner until payday. Bus fare if his truck finally refused to start. He continued walking. 10 steps. 15. 20. Then he stopped. His late mother's voice echoed inside his mind, as clearly as if she were standing beside him. "Son, if God ever blesses you enough to help someone who's hurting, don't ask whether you can afford kindness. Ask whether you can afford to lose your humanity." He closed his eyes for a brief moment, then turned around. Inside the grocery store, Malik ignored the shelves holding frozen meals and discounted snacks. Instead, he walked to the deli counter. "I'll take your 2 biggest grilled chicken meals," he told the cashier. "And 2 bottled waters." The young cashier smiled. "That'll be $19.68. Malik handed over his last $20 bill. The cashier counted out 32 cents in change. As Malik picked up the warm meal containers, he glanced at the tiny coins resting in his palm. 32 cents. That was all he had left in the world until payday. He chuckled softly. Well, I guess Mom wins again. Outside, the woman looked up as his shadow fell across the sidewalk. Without saying a word, Malik crouched beside her and held out one of the meals. "I figured lunch tastes better when nobody has to eat alone." The woman's eyes widened. For several seconds, she simply stared at him, almost as though she couldn't believe he was real. You're giving this to me." He smiled. "Actually," he held up the second meal. I'm hoping you'll help me finish mine. For the first time in many days. The woman smiled. It was a small smile. Gentle, warm, and somehow unforgettable. Neither of them knew that this simple meal shared on a hot summer sidewalk was about to change both of their lives forever. For a few moments after Malik handed her the warm meal, neither of them spoke. The sounds of the busy city filled the silence between them. Car horns, distant sirens, laughter from people leaving nearby cafes, and the rhythmic rumble of buses stopping to pick up passengers. The woman accepted the container with both hands as though it were something priceless. Not because of the food, because of the way it had been given. Without disgust, without pity, without an audience. Malik lowered himself onto the curb a comfortable distance away and opened his own meal. I hope grilled chicken is okay, he said with an awkward grin. The fried one looked better, but it cost $2 more. The woman looked at him, then at the food. It's perfect. He shrugged. I figured if I was going to eat, somebody else might as well eat too. She hesitated before opening the container. The aroma of roasted chicken and seasoned rice drifted into the warm afternoon air. She closed her eyes for a brief second. Not because she was starving, but because it had been a very long time since someone had offered her something with genuine kindness instead of curiosity. She took a careful bite. It's delicious, she whispered. Malik smiled. I'm glad. They ate quietly for several minutes. Unlike most people who occasionally handed food to homeless strangers before rushing away, Malik never acted uncomfortable. He wasn't waiting for praise. He wasn't recording a video. He wasn't expecting gratitude. He simply ate lunch beside another human being. Finally, the woman broke the silence. My name is Ava. It was not her real name. Her real name was known around the world. But today, she was simply Ava. Malik extended his hand naturally. I'm Malik. She shook it. His handshake was firm but gentle. No hesitation. No sign that he viewed her differently because of where she was sitting. So, Malik said, taking another bite, how long have you been out here? Ava looked toward the passing traffic. A while. You got family. She smiled sadly. They're far away. He nodded. I know how that feels. She glanced toward him. You do. My dad passed away when I was in college. He paused. I dropped out to take care of my mom. What happened? Cancer. I'm sorry. So am I. For a few moments, neither of them spoke again. Then Malik laughed softly. You know what's funny? What? I've probably told you more about myself in 5 minutes than I've told some people I've known for years. Ava couldn't help smiling. Maybe it's because strangers don't always judge. He pointed toward her cardboard sign. I noticed you asked for food instead of money. I don't like asking for money. Why? Because money changes how people see each other. Malik considered her answer. You know, I think you're right. Several yards away, inside a black SUV parked across the street, 2 people watched quietly through lightly tinted windows. One was a middle-aged woman wearing an earpiece. The other was a former Secret Service agent. Both belonged to Kingston Global Security. Neither took their eyes off the pair sitting on the sidewalk. Subject interaction has exceeded 12 minutes, the security chief quietly reported into a concealed microphone. No signs of recognition. No attempt to exploit. No recording devices observed. The voice in his earpiece answered calmly. Continue observation only. Back on the sidewalk, Malik reached into his pocket and pulled out the 32 cents the cashier had returned. He laughed. Well, Ava looked confused. What? I officially have 32 cents until Friday. She stared at him. What do you mean? I spent my last $20 on lunch. She stopped chewing. You. He shrugged, as though it weren't important. I'll survive. Her expression changed. You shouldn't have done that. He smiled. I know. So why did you? He looked directly at her. Because I was hungry. She blinked. You were. No. He chuckled. You were. For the first time in weeks, Ava felt something tightening in her throat. During the previous 23 days of her social experiment, hundreds of people had passed her. Some had thrown coins without making eye contact. A handful had offered leftovers they clearly didn't want. One influencer had filmed himself pretending to buy her lunch before taking the food back once the camera stopped recording. But this man, this ordinary mechanic, had quietly spent everything he had. Not to impress anyone, simply because another person looked hungry. She had spent years wondering whether genuine kindness still existed. Now she was sitting beside it. Malik finished his meal and stood, brushing dust from his jeans. I should probably head home. Ava nodded. Thank you. He smiled. You don't have to thank me. Before walking away, he reached into his pocket again. He looked at the 3 coins resting in his hand. 32 cents. He stared at them for a second. Then he crouched back down and gently placed the coins beside her backpack. It's not much, he said with an embarrassed smile, but maybe it'll help. Ava looked at the coins as if they weighed 100 pounds. No. I can't take that. You can. It's all you have. I know. She looked into his eyes. Then why are you giving it to me? Malik answered without hesitation. My mother used to say that generosity isn't measured by how much you give. It's measured by what you're willing to keep. He gave her one last smile, turned around, and walked toward the bus stop without looking back. Ava remained frozen on the sidewalk, staring at the tiny coins in front of her. Across the street, inside the black SUV, the security chief slowly lowered his binoculars. In nearly 3 decades of executive protection, he had witnessed billion-dollar negotiations, political summits, and international crises. Yet the scene he had just watched left him speechless. He pressed the communication button on his earpiece. Ma'am. His voice was unusually emotional. I think we've finally found someone different. Miles away, inside the top floor of Kingston Global's headquarters, a private operations team watched the live security feed in complete silence. No one said a word, because every single person in the room had just witnessed something their billionaire CEO had spent years searching for. Not a man impressed by wealth, not a man chasing status, but a man whose greatest fortune was the kindness in his heart. The following evening, Malik finished work an hour later than usual. Parker's auto repair had been unusually busy, and by the time he wiped the last streak of grease from his hands, the orange glow of sunset had begun stretching across the city. His employer, 70-year-old Walter Parker, watched him lock the toolbox. You look worn out, son. Malik chuckled. I feel worn out. Walter handed him a paper bag. Take these home. Malik peeked inside. 2 turkey sandwiches, an apple, and a bottle of water. The cafe next door made too many, Walter explained. They were going to throw them away. Thanks. Walter smiled knowingly. Just make sure you actually eat this time. Malik scratched the back of his neck. You heard about yesterday. The cashier at Mason's grocery has a cousin who works here. Malik sighed dramatically. News travels fast. Walter folded his arms. You gave away your last $20. I'll make more. Walter looked at him for several seconds before placing a weathered hand on his shoulder. Your mother would be proud. Malik smiled quietly. I hope so. Instead of heading straight to the bus stop, Malik found himself walking toward Mason's grocery again. He wasn't entirely sure why. Maybe he wanted to check if the woman had found somewhere safe. Maybe he simply hoped she wasn't hungry anymore. As he rounded the corner, he saw her sitting in the same place beneath the faded awning. She looked up immediately. "You came back." Malik lifted the paper bag. "My boss, accidentally, made me responsible for leftovers." Ava laughed softly. "I doubt it was an accident. You're probably right." He sat beside her once more. This time, there was less awkwardness. The silence between them felt comfortable, like two old friends who didn't need to fill every moment with conversation. They shared the sandwiches, cutting them in half so each had one. When Malik offered her the apple, she shook her head. "You should keep it. We'll split it." He borrowed a small pocket knife from his work belt, sliced the apple neatly in half, and handed her the larger piece. "You gave me the bigger half." "I did." "Yes." He examined both pieces with exaggerated seriousness. "I must need my eyes checked." She smiled. "No. You knew exactly what you were doing." He grinned. "Guilty." A few meters away, a young man wearing headphones pretended to scroll through his phone while discreetly observing them. Another woman sat at a nearby cafe reading a newspaper. A delivery van remained parked across the street. To everyone else, they were ordinary people going about their evening. In reality, they were members of Ariana Kingston's security detail. Every movement around their CEO was carefully monitored. Inside the delivery van, former Secret Service agent Daniel Brooks spoke quietly into his headset. Subject Carter returned voluntarily. No gifts beyond shared food. No attempt to obtain personal information. No suspicious behavior. The voice from headquarters replied, "Continue passive observation." As dusk settled over the city, Ava studied Malik carefully. Most people talked endlessly about themselves. Malik rarely did. Instead, he asked simple questions. "Have you managed to find a shelter?" "Not yet." "Need help looking?" "I'll be okay." "You don't always have to be." She looked away. "You really believe people?" "Most of them. Even after everything you've been through." He nodded. "If you stop believing there's good in people." He shrugged. "They usually prove you right." She considered that. "Has anyone ever taken advantage of your kindness?" "Oh, plenty. And yet you keep helping." "My mother used to say something." "What?" "Don't let someone else's darkness decide how brightly you'll shine." Ava lowered her eyes. "She sounds like an extraordinary woman." She was. That night, several floors beneath Kingston Global's executive offices, a private investigation team gathered around a conference table. Large digital screens displayed photographs of Malik. Employment records. Tax filings. Driving history. Medical records, legally obtained through the company's authorized investigators. A senior analyst adjusted his glasses. Background report complete. Ariana, now dressed in an elegant navy business suit instead of worn street clothes, sat silently at the head of the table. She looked nothing like the woman on the sidewalk. "Proceed." The analyst clicked to the next screen. Malik Carter, 29 years old. No criminal record. Excellent credit history despite low income. Never filed fraudulent insurance claims. No gambling debts. No civil lawsuits. Another screen appeared. Following his father's death, he withdrew from university to care for his terminally ill mother. Ariana remained expressionless. "Continue." He declined 3 higher-paying job offers because accepting them would have required relocating, leaving his mother without adequate care. The room fell quiet. Another investigator spoke. "We interviewed neighbors discreetly." "Anything concerning?" No. In fact, he smiled faintly. We found something unusual. Photos appeared on the screen. An elderly widow standing beside a repaired car. A single mother hugging 2 children. A disabled veteran smiling outside his small house. Over the past 4 years, Mr. Carter has repaired vehicles free of labor charges for dozens of people who couldn't afford repairs. He pays an elderly neighbor's electricity bill anonymously during winter. He spends Saturday mornings teaching teenagers basic vehicle maintenance without charging a fee. Ariana leaned forward slightly. How many people know this? Very few. Why? He specifically asked everyone not to tell anyone. The analyst looked around the room before adding quietly. We also confirmed something else. The $20 he spent yesterday. He paused. Represented every pound he had available until payday. Silence. Absolute silence. Finally, Ariana spoke. Not a performance. No, ma'am. Not for social media. No. Not to impress me. He had no idea who you were. She slowly closed the file. For years, she had been surrounded by people who smiled only after learning her surname. People who praised her because of private jets, skyscrapers, and magazine covers. Yet the one man who had treated her with the greatest respect believed she owned nothing except a backpack and a cardboard sign. For the first time since beginning the experiment, Ariana allowed herself to hope. Not hope that she had found love. That would be foolish. But hope that genuine goodness still existed. The next morning, before putting on the worn hoodie once again, she looked at herself in the mirror. This time, when she headed back to the sidewalk, it wasn't to continue an experiment. It was because, for the first time in years, she was looking forward to seeing someone. By the end of the first week, seeing Ava outside Mason's grocery had quietly become part of Malik's daily routine. Every evening after work, he would stop by for a little while. Sometimes he brought leftovers from Parker's auto repair. Other times he picked up discounted pastries from a bakery that sold unsold items just before closing. On the rare days he had nothing to bring, he came anyway. He had discovered something that surprised him. Ava never complained. She never asked him for money. She never hinted that she needed expensive things. She simply enjoyed talking. For Malik, whose life revolved around grease-covered engines and endless bills, those conversations became the most peaceful part of his day. One evening, dark clouds gathered unexpectedly over the city. The air turned cooler as thunder rolled in the distance. Malik arrived carrying a small paper bag. I think we have about 10 minutes before the rain starts. Ava smiled. You've become a weather expert. No. He laughed. My knees just start hurting before it rains. She couldn't help laughing. I've never heard that one before. My grandfather swore by it. He handed her the bag. Inside were 2 bowls of hot chicken soup, sealed with plastic lids, and 2 bread rolls. You remembered I liked soup. You looked happier eating it than sandwiches. For a brief moment, Ava simply stared at him. He noticed little things. Things that even people who had known her for years rarely noticed. The rain began suddenly. Heavy drops pounded against the pavement, sending pedestrians running for cover. Malik looked around. You'll get soaked sitting here. I'm used to it. That doesn't mean you should be. He glanced across the street. There was a small covered bus shelter. Come on. She hesitated. I don't want to inconvenience anyone. You won't. He picked up her backpack before she could protest. I'll carry this. Together they hurried across the road, laughing as the rain soaked their sleeves before they reached the shelter. Several strangers stood inside. A young mother with 2 children. An elderly man. A university student. Everyone moved slightly to make room for Ava. Malik stood near the edge, allowing the others to stay dry while rain splashed against his back. Ava noticed immediately. "You're getting wet." "I'm fine." "No, you're not." She shifted closer so he could stand farther inside. He shook his head. "You'll catch cold." "So will you." The elderly man watching them smiled quietly. "You two remind me of my wife and me." Both of them laughed awkwardly. "We're just friends," Malik explained. "For now," the old man replied with a wink. The entire shelter burst into gentle laughter. Even Ava felt her cheeks grow warm. Across the street, Daniel Brooks sat inside the security vehicle. One of his team members looked up from a monitor. "Should we intervene?" Daniel shook his head. "No. The shelter is secure. Maintain distance." For nearly 2 weeks, they had observed Malik. They had expected curiosity, greed, an attempt to exploit Ava's apparent vulnerability. Instead, every report looked remarkably similar. Shared food, respectful conversation, no requests, no hidden motives. Daniel had protected presidents, diplomats, and billionaire executives during his career. Very few people impressed him anymore. Malik Carter was becoming one of those rare exceptions. The next afternoon, another unexpected moment occurred. Malik arrived to find Ava sitting alone, staring at a stray dog lying nearby. The dog's front paw was bleeding. Several people had walked around it without stopping. Malik immediately knelt. "Easy, buddy." The frightened dog growled weakly. "It's okay." He removed a clean shop rag from his work bag and gently wrapped the injured paw. A nearby convenience store sold basic first aid supplies. Without hesitation, Malik went inside and bought antiseptic spray, gauze, and bottled water. Returning, he carefully cleaned the wound. The dog whimpered, but never tried to bite him. Ava watched every movement. "You know how to do that?" "My uncle was a veterinarian." "You've treated animals before?" "A few." He smiled. "They don't understand words. They understand kindness." After finishing, he poured water into the lid of the bottle. The dog drank eagerly. Then, to everyone's surprise, it rested its head against Malik's knee. A small crowd had gathered. A teenage girl whispered to her mother. That man didn't even think twice. Another passerby quietly offered the dog a packet of dog food. Kindness, it seemed, was spreading from one person to another. Ava felt tears sting her eyes. This wasn't staged. There were no cameras. No one knew who she truly was. Malik simply couldn't walk past suffering, whether it belonged to a person or an animal. That evening, back at Kingston Global Headquarters, the daily briefing took a different tone. Daniel stood before Ariana. "Our investigators have completed additional interviews." Ariana looked up. "What did they find?" "A local primary school." She frowned slightly. "What about it?" The head teacher confirmed Mr. Carter volunteers twice each month. "Doing what?" "He teaches older pupils practical life skills." Ariana raised an eyebrow. "Vehicle maintenance." Daniel smiled. "No. He teaches perseverance." Another file appeared on the large screen. A teacher's written statement. "Mr. Carter tells our pupils that success isn't measured by what you own, but by the number of people whose lives become better because you lived." The room remained silent. Daniel continued. One student wrote that Mr. Carter bought him school shoes after noticing the soles had worn through. He never told anyone. His name wasn't mentioned. The head teacher only confirmed it after checking donation records. Ariana slowly closed the folder. She had spent years surrounded by powerful executives who proudly announced every charitable donation they made. Malik had quietly changed lives without expecting recognition. The contrast was impossible to ignore. The following evening, As the sun dipped below the skyline, Malik arrived carrying nothing. He looked embarrassed. "I'm sorry." "For what?" "I couldn't bring food today." Ava smiled warmly. "You've already brought enough." He sat beside her. "I still feel bad." She shook her head. "Malik." He looked at her. "Do you know why I look forward to seeing you every day?" He smiled. "Because I tell terrible jokes." She laughed. "They are terrible." "Say." "But that's not why." "Then why?" She looked directly into his eyes. "Because when you sit beside me, I stop feeling invisible." Her words settled quietly between them. Malik didn't respond immediately. Instead, he looked at the busy pavement where hundreds of people continued walking past without noticing the woman sitting only a few feet away. Then he said softly, "Nobody deserves to feel invisible." Neither of them realized that, in that simple moment, their friendship had crossed an invisible line. It was no longer built on sympathy. It was built on trust. And for Ariana Kingston, trust had always been the one thing money could never buy. By the beginning of the third week, something had changed. It wasn't obvious to anyone walking past Mason's grocery. To them, Malik was simply a mechanic who often stopped to talk with a homeless woman. But to Ariana Kingston, the line between her carefully designed social experiment and her real emotions had begun to blur. Every morning, she reminded herself of the rules she had written before the experiment began. Do not become emotionally attached. Observe, don't influence. Judge actions, not feelings. Those rules had protected her from disappointment for years. Now, for the first time, they were becoming difficult to follow. Every evening, she found herself looking forward to hearing Malik's footsteps before she even saw him. She remembered the way he laughed. The way he listened, without interrupting. The way he always spoke to her, as though she mattered. She had started the experiment searching for proof that kindness still existed. She hadn't expected to enjoy the company of the man who proved it. But one question still remained unanswered. Was Malik kind only when helping from a distance? Or would he make a real sacrifice if helping someone genuinely cost him something? It was time for the final test. The following afternoon, the sky was unusually gray. A cool breeze swept through the streets as Malik arrived carrying 2 cups of hot coffee and a small paper bag filled with fresh bread rolls. "I figured today felt like coffee weather." Ava smiled. "You keep reading my mind." "No." He grinned. "I'm just hoping one day I'll get lucky." They sat together beneath the awning, while the wind rattled the nearby shop signs. For a long while, Ava remained unusually quiet. Malik noticed. "You okay?" She stared at the paper cup in her hands. "I need to ask you something." His expression immediately grew serious. "What is it?" She hesitated, as though embarrassed. "Last night, someone stole my backpack." Malik frowned. "The one you always keep beside you." She nodded. "It had the little money I'd saved, my extra clothes, everything." "I'm so sorry. I spent the whole night walking." She lowered her eyes. "The shelter is full." There was a long silence. Then she whispered the words she had rehearsed all morning. "I don't have anywhere to sleep tonight." Malik looked down at the pavement. He didn't answer immediately. Not because he didn't care. Because he was thinking. His apartment wasn't really an apartment. It was a tiny, one-bedroom flat above an old hardware store. The sofa sagged in the middle. The kitchen was barely large enough for one person to stand in. The landlord already complained whenever visitors stayed overnight. Malik knew the rules. No long-term guests. No exceptions. If he broke them, he could lose the only home he had. Ava watched his face carefully. For the first time since meeting him, she saw conflict. Not selfishness. Responsibility. He was weighing two difficult realities against each other. Protect the little security he had, or help someone with nowhere to go. She spoke before he could answer. It's all right. I shouldn't have asked. I'll figure something out. She started to stand. Malik gently reached out. Wait. She looked back. My place isn't much. He smiled apologetically. The sofa feels like sleeping on old car springs. Despite the seriousness of the moment, she laughed softly. And the wallpaper probably went out of fashion 20 years ago. It definitely did. You'd really let me stay. As long as you don't mind listening to the neighbor's television through the wall every night. Ava stared at him. You barely know me. He nodded. That's true. You don't know if I'm dangerous. I don't think you are. You could be wrong. I could. She searched his face. Then why trust me? Malik answered quietly. Because somebody trusted me once when I had nothing. He looked toward the busy street. When my dad died, an elderly couple from our church let my mum and me stay with them for almost 2 months. They didn't owe us anything. They just said, everyone needs someone to believe in them. He smiled faintly. I've never forgotten that. Ava felt her chest tighten. No rehearsed answer could prepare her for this. He wasn't helping because he expected anything in return. He was simply passing forward the kindness someone had once shown him. From inside a parked maintenance van across the street, Daniel Brooks lowered his binoculars. She's asking now. The other security officer looked at the monitor. Think he'll agree. Daniel didn't answer immediately. After weeks of watching Malik, he already knew. I'd be more surprised if he didn't. Moments later, the confirmation came through Ariana's discreet microphone. Malik had offered his home. Without negotiation. Without conditions. Without asking for anything. Daniel slowly exhaled. I've spent 30 years protecting important people, he said quietly. I've met senators, celebrities, billionaires, and kings. He looked back through the windscreen. And that mechanic may be the richest man I've ever seen. That evening, Malik led Ava to his modest apartment. The building was old but clean. Paint peeled from parts of the hallway. The lift had been broken for months, forcing them to climb 3 flights of narrow stairs. When Malik unlocked the door, he looked almost embarrassed. I'm sorry it's so small. Ava stepped inside. The furniture was simple. The sofa had indeed seen better days. The dining table had clearly been repaired more than once. But everything was spotless. Family photographs filled one wall. A framed picture of Malik's late parents stood on a small shelf. Fresh flowers sat beside it. You keep this place beautiful, Ava said softly. He smiled. My mum used to say a home doesn't have to be expensive. It just has to be filled with peace. He spread a clean blanket across the sofa. You take the couch. I'll sleep in the armchair. Ava immediately shook her head. No. You live here. So, you should have the sofa. He laughed. We're arguing over who gets the uncomfortable bed. She smiled. I guess we are. At that moment, she realized something extraordinary. For the first time in years, she didn't feel like a billionaire pretending to be poor. She simply felt like a woman who had been welcomed into someone's home. Not because of her name. Not because of her fortune. But because someone believed no human being should face the night alone. As she looked around the tiny flat, she silently admitted something she had spent years refusing to believe. She hadn't just found a kind man. She had found the kind of man she had been praying existed. The next morning, sunlight streamed through the small kitchen window as Malik quietly prepared breakfast. The apartment smelled of freshly brewed coffee and toasted bread. He cracked a few eggs into a frying pan and smiled to himself. You said yesterday you liked scrambled eggs, he called toward the living room. There was no answer. He assumed Ava was still asleep. Turning off the stove, he carried 2 plates into the sitting room. The sofa was empty. The neatly folded blanket rested on the cushion. For a moment, he simply stood there. Ava. Silence. He checked the tiny bathroom. Empty. The bedroom. Empty. Only one thing remained on the coffee table. A handwritten note. Malik picked it up. The handwriting was as neat as the words on her cardboard sign. Thank you for giving a stranger kindness when you had so little yourself. I'll never forget what you've done for me. Please don't worry about me. I had to leave. Ava. He read it again. Then a third time. A strange feeling settled over him. Something wasn't right. There was no explanation. No goodbye. Just gone. He looked out of the apartment window toward the street below, half expecting to see her walking away. She wasn't there. For the next several days, Malik searched everywhere. Each evening after work, he returned to Mason's grocery. The spot beneath the faded awning was empty. He asked the cashier if anyone had seen her. No, she replied sympathetically. I wondered where she'd gone too. He visited nearby shelters. No one recognized the description. He checked the small public park where they had once shared coffee. Nothing. Even the elderly man, who often fed pigeons, shook his head. Haven't seen her, son. Malik thanked him and walked away, disappointment weighing heavily on his shoulders. He told himself she had probably found somewhere safe. Maybe she had reunited with family. Maybe she had finally received the help she needed. That should have made him happy. So why did the city suddenly feel strangely empty? At Kingston Global Headquarters, the atmosphere was entirely different. Gone were the worn clothes, the knit cap and the weathered backpack. Standing before a full-length mirror, Ariana Kingston slowly removed the simple silver necklace she had worn throughout the experiment. A stylist adjusted the collar of an elegant ivory trouser suit. Another assistant carefully pinned a small diamond brooch to her jacket. Her long natural curls framed her face perfectly. She looked every bit the internationally respected billionaire whose photograph had appeared on the covers of business magazines around the world. Yet her expression wasn't one of triumph. It was uncertainty. Daniel Brooks entered the dressing room. The board members have all arrived. She nodded. The press. Waiting downstairs. The investors. Already seated. He hesitated. And Mr. Carter. Ariana looked up immediately. Has he accepted? Daniel smiled. Yes. She released a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. 3 days earlier, an unusual envelope had arrived at Parker's auto repair. Walter Parker handed it to Malik while wiping oil from his hands. For you. Malik frowned. I don't know anyone who sends fancy envelopes. The thick cream-colored envelope bore a gold seal. Across the front were the words, Kingston Technologies. He opened it carefully. Inside was a formal invitation. Mr. Malik Carter. In recognition of Parker's repairs years of service maintaining our community outreach vehicles, you are cordially invited to attend the grand reopening of the Kingston Community Innovation Center. Formal attire requested. Malik looked confused. There must be some mistake. Walter adjusted his glasses before reading the invitation himself. No mistake. We've repaired their delivery vans for years. He smiled. You deserve a night away from grease and engines. Malik laughed. I don't even own a proper suit. Walter disappeared into his office. A few minutes later, he returned carrying a navy garment bag. I wore this to my daughter's wedding. Malik blinked. I can't take your suit. You can borrow it. Walter. It still fits me. So, I'd rather it make new memories then stay hanging in a wardrobe. Malik's eyes softened. Thank you. The evening of the gala arrived. Kingston Technologies' headquarters glowed beneath hundreds of lights. Luxury cars lined the entrance. Photographers gathered behind velvet barriers. Business leaders, politicians, and celebrities stepped onto the red carpet one after another. Malik felt completely out of place. Walter's tailored navy suit fit surprisingly well. Still, he couldn't stop adjusting his tie. As he approached the entrance, a smiling hostess greeted him. "Good evening, Mr. Carter." He looked behind him. "Me?" She nodded politely. "We've been expecting you." "Expecting me?" The words echoed in his mind. How could one of the biggest technology companies in the country know who he was? Inside, the grand ballroom was breathtaking. Crystal chandeliers sparkled overhead. Large floral arrangements decorated every table. A string quartet played softly from a raised platform. Waiters moved gracefully through the crowd carrying silver trays filled with elegant hors d'oeuvres. Malik had never seen anything like it. He quietly found his assigned seat near the back of the ballroom. The program listed one final item. Special address by founder and CEO. The lights dimmed. A voice echoed through the room. "Ladies and gentlemen, it is my great honor to welcome you to tonight's celebration." Polite applause filled the ballroom. The chairman continued. "Before we begin, I'd like to introduce the extraordinary woman whose vision transformed Kingston Technologies from a small startup into one of the world's most respected innovation companies." A large screen behind the stage lit up. Images flashed across it. Company achievements, research laboratories, scholarship programs, international awards. Finally, the chairman smiled. "Please welcome our founder, chairwoman, and chief executive officer, Ms. Ariana Kingston." The audience rose to its feet in thunderous applause. Malik joined them politely. Then, the woman stepped onto the stage. His smile disappeared. The applause faded into distant noise. His heart pounded so loudly he could barely hear anything else. Elegant ivory suit. Confident smile. The same gentle eyes. It was Ava. No, not Ava. Ariana Kingston. The woman he had shared sandwiches with on a pavement. The woman who had slept on his sofa. The woman everyone believed was a homeless beggar. She stood beneath brilliant stage lights as one of the most powerful women in America. Malik's world tilted. He couldn't breathe. His mind raced through every conversation they had shared. Every cup of coffee. Every laugh. Every moment. Had it all been a lie? On stage, Ariana's eyes slowly scanned the audience. Then they found him. For a brief moment, the confident billionaire disappeared. She simply looked like the woman from the sidewalk. Relief flickered across her face. But Malik wasn't smiling. He stared at her in stunned disbelief. His heart filled with confusion, hurt, and questions that refused to wait. Before Ariana could begin her prepared speech, Malik quietly stepped away from his table. He walked towards the ballroom doors. One step, then another. Behind him, the audience remained focused on the stage. Only Ariana noticed him leaving. Her smile faltered for the briefest second. She knew exactly why he was walking away. The one thing she had hoped to protect. His trust. Might have been the one thing she had just lost. The ballroom remained on its feet, applauding the woman who had built Kingston Technologies into a global empire. But Ariana Kingston heard none of it. Her eyes stayed fixed on the man quietly walking towards the exit. Malik never looked back. Every step felt heavier than the last. The elegant ballroom blurred before his eyes as countless memories rushed through his mind. The sandwiches they had shared on the pavement. The laughter during the rainstorm. The wounded stray dog. The tiny apartment where she had slept on his worn-out sofa. The handwritten note she had left behind. Had any of it been real? Or had he simply been another subject in a billionaire's experiment? The applause faded behind him as he pushed open the grand doors. Cool evening air greeted him. He descended the marble steps slowly, trying to make sense of everything. Behind him, the chairman looked towards Ariana. Ms. Kingston. She didn't answer. Instead, she leaned towards the microphone. Ladies and gentlemen. Her voice was calm but unusually soft. I sincerely apologize. I need a few moments. Before anyone could react, she stepped away from the podium. Gasps spread through the ballroom. Board members exchanged puzzled glances. Reporters whispered to one another. Daniel Brooks immediately signaled the security team. No one follows. Give her space. Ariana gathered the hem of her jacket and hurried through the same doors Malik had just exited. She found him standing beside the large fountain outside the headquarters. The water shimmered beneath the evening lights. Malik stared into it silently. For several seconds, neither of them spoke. Finally, Ariana broke the silence. I was hoping you'd come tonight. He let out a quiet laugh. I wish I hadn't. Her heart sank. I know you're angry. He turned to face her. Angry? No. His expression carried something far more painful. Disappointment. I don't even know what I am. His voice remained calm, but every word carried weight. I've spent the last 3 weeks wondering whether you were safe. I searched shelters. I asked strangers if they'd seen you. I thought something terrible had happened. He looked directly into her eyes. And all that time, you were preparing for a gala. Ariana lowered her head. I'm sorry. You deserve an explanation. He nodded slowly. I think I do. They sat on a stone bench overlooking the fountain. For the first time since meeting him, Ariana told him everything. My real name is Ariana Kingston. I'm the founder of Kingston Technologies. My family built their fortune over 3 generations. I inherited the company after my parents died. Malik listened quietly. She continued. I've spent most of my adult life wondering whether anyone could ever love me. Without first seeing my bank account. She told him about the fiancé who secretly forged documents to gain control of company shares. She spoke about the businessman who proposed after only 4 months, then disappeared the day he signed a strict prenuptial agreement. She described another relationship that ended when a man admitted he had researched the estimated value of her inheritance before asking her to marry him. Each memory carried visible pain. I stopped believing compliments. I stopped believing promises. I even stopped believing kindness. Her voice trembled slightly. So I created the experiment. My security team stayed nearby. Doctors monitored my health. The board approved every precaution. I wasn't looking for a husband. I was looking for proof that genuine goodness still existed. She looked at him. And then I met you. Malik remained silent for a long time. Finally, he spoke. So every conversation was part of your experiment. It started that way. And afterwards, she answered immediately. No. After the second day, it stopped feeling like an experiment. I looked forward to seeing you. When you didn't come one evening because you were working late, I actually worried. When you made me laugh, I forgot I was pretending to be someone else. She smiled sadly. The happiest conversations I've had in years happened while sitting on a pavement beside you. Malik looked away. You should have told me. I know. I wanted to. So why didn't you? Because I became afraid. Afraid of what? That the moment you discovered who I really was, you'd never believe another word I said. He sighed deeply. And now? She looked down at her hands. Now that's exactly what's happened. The city lights reflected across the fountain as silence settled between them once again. After several minutes, Malik finally spoke. My mother taught me that trust is like glass. Ariana looked up. Once it's broken, you can repair it, but you'll always remember where it cracked. She felt tears gathering in her eyes. I understand. I don't expect forgiveness tonight. I don't expect anything. She reached into her handbag and removed a small object. It was the 3 coins Malik had given her outside Mason's grocery. 32 pence worth of change. She had carried them every day since. I kept these. He stared at them in surprise. You kept them. She nodded. They're worth more to me than any diamond I own. He looked puzzled. She smiled through tears. Those coins represent the only money you had. You gave them away anyway. I've negotiated billion-pound acquisitions. I've bought companies. I've donated millions to charities. But no gift I've ever received has meant as much as these 3 little coins. She gently placed them in his hand. I don't want your money, Malik. I don't need saving. I don't even need you to love me. She swallowed hard. I only hope that one day you'll believe that the woman who laughed with you in the rain was real. Daniel Brooks watched quietly from a respectful distance. One of the younger security officers approached him. Should we go over? Daniel shook his head. No. This isn't something security can fix. Malik looked at the coins resting in his palm, then at the woman sitting beside him. Not the billionaire CEO. Not the homeless woman. Simply Ariana. A woman who had been deeply wounded by people who loved wealth more than character. He understood why she had done it. But understanding wasn't the same as healing. Finally, he stood. I don't hate you. Ariana slowly looked up. But I can't pretend this doesn't hurt. She nodded, tears slipping down her cheeks. I know. I need time. You have every right. He managed a faint smile. For what it's worth, the woman I got to know, she was worth caring about. He turned to leave, then paused. But if we're ever going to have any kind of future, there can't be any more disguises. No more tests. No more secrets. Ariana rose to her feet. There won't be. I promise. He gave a small nod before walking into the night. Ariana watched until he disappeared from sight. For the first time in years, she realized that building a multi-billion-pound company had been easier than rebuilding one honest man's trust. And she was determined to earn it, not with wealth, influence, or power, but with the same honesty and patience that Malik had shown her from the very beginning. 3 months passed. Autumn slowly painted the city in shades of amber and gold, replacing the bright summer afternoons when Malik and Ava, Ariana, had first shared a meal on the pavement outside Mason's grocery. Life returned to its familiar rhythm. Malik worked long hours at Parker's auto repair. Engines still broke down. Customers still complained about repair bills. Walter Parker still insisted everyone stop for coffee at exactly 10 every morning. Outwardly, very little had changed. Yet every so often, Malik caught himself looking toward the corner outside Mason's grocery. The faded awning was still there. The same brick wall. The same pavement. But the cardboard sign was gone. He never admitted it aloud, but he missed those conversations more than he expected. Ariana kept the promise she had made outside Kingston Technologies. No disguises. No tests. No secrets. She never appeared unexpectedly at Malik's workplace. She never used her wealth to force her way back into his life. She never asked her assistants to arrange another meeting. Instead, she wrote him a handwritten letter. Not on expensive company stationery. Not delivered by a private courier. Simply a plain envelope with an ordinary stamp. Inside was a short note. Dear Malik, you asked for honesty, so that's where I'll begin. I'm not writing to ask for another chance. I'm writing to thank you. Before I met you, I believed kindness had become something people performed whenever cameras were watching. You reminded me that real kindness asks for nothing in return. Whether we ever meet again or not, you've changed my life. Take care of yourself. Ariana. Malik read the letter 3 times. He folded it carefully and placed it inside the same Bible his mother had once given him. He still wasn't ready. But for the first time since the gala, he smiled. Several weeks later, Parker's Auto Repair received an unexpected visitor. A sleek black saloon pulled quietly into the forecourt. Daniel Brooks stepped out. Malik recognized him immediately. You were one of the security guards. Daniel nodded. I was. If you're here because Ms. Kingston sent you. I'm not. Malik looked surprised. I'm here because of Walter. Walter emerged from the office carrying an old folder. Daniel smiled warmly. Kingston Technologies is launching a nationwide apprenticeship program for disadvantaged young adults. Walter looked at Malik. They asked if our garage would like to participate. Malik frowned. Why us? Daniel answered honestly. Because Ms. Kingston insisted the program should include workshops led by people whose character is worth copying. I told her there were hundreds of better mechanics. Daniel smiled. She replied, I wasn't looking for the best mechanic. I was looking for the best example. Malik lowered his eyes. It wasn't praise that touched him. It was the fact that Ariana hadn't offered him money. She had offered him an opportunity to help others. Months later, the apprenticeship program officially began. Every Saturday morning, teenagers from difficult backgrounds gathered inside Parker's Auto Repair. Some had dropped out of school. Others had grown up without parents. Several had never imagined anyone would invest time in teaching them. Malik taught them how to repair engines. Walter taught them discipline. Retired mechanics volunteered their experience. The program quickly became one of the most successful community initiatives in the city. Ariana attended the opening ceremony. Quietly, without television cameras. She stood at the back of the workshop, wearing simple jeans, trainers, and a navy polo shirt. No designer labels. No entourage. When Malik noticed her, he walked over. You came. She smiled gently. I wanted to see what kindness looks like when it multiplies. He looked around the garage. Teenagers laughed while learning to rebuild an engine. One boy proudly held up a repaired alternator. An elderly volunteer patiently explained the purpose of brake pads. Malik smiled. I guess this is what happens when one person believes in another. Over the following weeks, their conversations slowly returned. This time, there were no hidden identities. No unanswered questions. If Ariana couldn't attend because of business travel, she told him. If Malik felt hurt by something from the past, he said so honestly. Their friendship became stronger because neither pretended to be perfect. One evening, after the workshop had ended, they stopped outside Mason's grocery. The familiar pavement lay quiet beneath the setting sun. I've been thinking, Malik said. About what? The first day we met. She laughed softly. I was terrified. You hid it well. I almost ended the experiment before you arrived. He looked surprised. Really? She nodded. I'd spent 23 days watching people ignore me. I started believing I made a terrible mistake. She smiled at him. Then a mechanic with 20 pounds walked into a grocery shop and spent every penny on a stranger. Malik laughed. I still can't believe I did that. I can. She reached into her handbag. He smiled knowingly. You still carry them. She opened her hand. The 3 small coins rested in her palm. I always will. Winter arrived. One crisp December evening, Ariana invited Malik to visit the newly completed Kingston Community Outreach Center. The building stood on the very corner where they had first met. What had once been an ordinary stretch of pavement now housed a welcoming center offering hot meals, temporary accommodation, job placement services, and mental health support. A brass plaque near the entrance read, "Dedicated to the belief that one act of kindness can change a life." There was no mention of Ariana. No mention of Kingston Technologies. No mention of Billions. Malik looked at the plaque. You didn't put your name on it. She shook her head. It was never about me. He looked at her for a long moment. Then he smiled. You've changed. She smiled back. So have you. He laughed. Hopefully for the better. I know for the better. For the first time since the truth had been revealed, Malik reached for her hand. She looked down in surprise as their fingers intertwined. No cameras captured the moment. No reporters stood nearby. Only 2 people who had traveled a difficult road toward trust. Malik looked into her eyes. I think. She held her breath. I'm finally getting to know the real Ariana. A tear rolled gently down her cheek. This time, there are no secrets. He squeezed her hand. Good. Because I'd like to take you to dinner. She laughed through happy tears. Is this a billionaire dinner? Or a mechanic dinner? He grinned. Definitely a mechanic dinner. She smiled. I've discovered those are my favorite kind. Together, they walked away from the place where a simple act of compassion had first brought their lives together, this time not as strangers, but as 2 people choosing each other, honestly and wholeheartedly. A year passed. For Malik Carter, it was the happiest year of his life. Not because he had become wealthy. He hadn't. He still arrived at Parker's Auto Repair before sunrise every weekday, wearing the same blue overalls and working with the same determination that had earned Walter Parker's respect years earlier. He still repaired worn-out engines. He still refused to overcharge customers. He still quietly fixed vehicles for struggling families whenever he could. Some things he believed should never change. The difference was that now, every evening, someone was waiting to hear about his day. And every evening, he wanted to hear about hers. Despite running one of the world's fastest-growing technology companies, Ariana never allowed success to become an excuse for neglecting the people she loved. She often left board meetings wearing an elegant business suit, only to arrive at Parker's Auto Repair an hour later in jeans and trainers, helping the apprentices clean tools or serving sandwiches to everyone during lunch breaks. The young trainees adored her. Not because she was a billionaire. Most of them had no idea who she was during those afternoons. To them, she was simply Miss Ari, the kind woman who remembered every student's name and celebrated every small achievement. Watching her laugh with the apprentices, Malik often found himself smiling. The woman he had first met, beneath a faded awning, had never disappeared. She had simply stopped hiding. The Kingston Community Outreach Center had transformed the neighborhood. Every day, volunteers served hundreds of hot meals. Employment advisors helped people find work. Counselors offered support to those rebuilding their lives. Families who had once slept in cars now found temporary accommodation and a path toward permanent housing. The center became a symbol of hope, not because it had been funded by billions, but because it had been inspired by one simple act of compassion. One afternoon, Walter Parker stood beside Malik, watching dozens of volunteers greet people at the entrance. You know, Walter said thoughtfully, most people think changing the world starts with millions of pounds. Malik smiled. My mum used to say it starts with one decision. Walter nodded. Looks like she was right. As autumn returned, Ariana received an invitation unlike any she had ever received before. It wasn't embossed in gold. It wasn't delivered by an assistant. It wasn't hidden inside an expensive envelope. It was a handwritten note left on her office desk. Meet me tomorrow. Noon. Outside Mason's grocery. Come alone. Malik. She read it twice before smiling. For reasons she couldn't explain, her heart began racing. The following afternoon, bright sunshine bathed the familiar street in warm light. The faded awning was still there. The brick wall looked exactly as it had a year earlier. Only one thing had changed. The pavement where she had once sat with a cardboard sign had been cleaned and decorated with large flower planters, maintained by the Outreach Center. Ariana arrived a few minutes early. She wore a simple cream-colored dress and flat shoes. No jewelry except the small silver necklace she had worn during the experiment. The one reminder of the woman she had pretended to be. Moments later, Malik appeared carrying a small paper bag. She laughed. You brought lunch. I did. He sat on the curb, exactly where they had shared their first meal. She joined him. Inside the bag were 2 grilled chicken meals. You're kidding. No. He handed one to her. I figured some traditions are worth keeping. They ate together, just as they had 1 year before. No luxury restaurant. No private dining room. Just 2 people sharing an ordinary meal. When they finished, Malik reached into his pocket. Ariana smiled. The 3 coins. He laughed. No. I think you've looked after those long enough. Instead, he removed a small velvet box. Her smile faded into stunned silence. Malik took a slow breath. I've spent the last year thinking about the first day we met. You thought I had nothing. I thought I had almost nothing. He smiled warmly. It turns out, we were both wrong. She felt tears filling her eyes. You showed me that love isn't measured by money. You showed me that trust can be rebuilt. You showed me that even after being hurt, it's still possible to choose kindness. He slowly knelt on one knee. Pedestrians passing by began slowing down. Several apprentices from Parker's garage watched from across the street, smiling knowingly. Walter Parker stood quietly near the Outreach Center entrance. Daniel Brooks folded his arms with a proud smile. No reporters had been invited. No television cameras were present. Only people whose lives had become intertwined by one extraordinary act of kindness. Malik opened the ring box. Inside rested a beautifully crafted ring. Elegant. Simple. Perfect. Ariana Kingston. His voice trembled slightly. The richest thing about you isn't your company. It isn't your success. It isn't your fortune. It's your heart. He smiled. And that's the woman I fell in love with. Tears streamed down Ariana's face. Will you marry me? She covered her mouth as emotion overwhelmed her. For several seconds, she couldn't speak. Finally, she laughed through her tears. Yes. Yes. Of course I will. As Malik gently placed the ring on her finger, applause erupted around them. People who had once walked past, without noticing the lonely woman beneath the awning now, celebrated the beginning of a beautiful future. 3 months later, they were married. Not in a palace. Not inside a luxury hotel. Not on a private island. Instead, they chose the gardens surrounding the Kingston Community Outreach Center. Rows of white chairs filled the lawn. Mechanics sat beside company executives. Former homeless residents sat beside government officials. The apprentices from Parker's garage proudly wore matching suits. Walter Parker escorted Ariana down the aisle after she asked him to perform the honor once meant for her late father. Daniel Brooks quietly wiped away tears. He hoped no one would notice. When the minister asked whether anyone wished to say a few words before the ceremony concluded, Walter slowly stood. He looked at the smiling couple, then at the hundreds of guests gathered before him. "I've repaired engines for nearly 50 years, he began. And I've learned something. When an engine breaks, you replace the damaged parts. But when a heart breaks, the only thing strong enough to repair it is kindness." Many guests wiped away tears. Walter smiled. One young mechanic gave away his last meal because he refused to let another human being go hungry. One lonely billionaire risked everything to discover whether genuine goodness still existed. They both found exactly what they were searching for. He looked towards Malik, not because they were rich, but because they chose to become a blessing in someone else's life. The applause lasted several minutes. As evening settled over the celebration, Malik and Ariana quietly slipped away from the reception. Hand in hand, they walked back to the familiar pavement outside Mason's grocery. The city lights shimmered around them. Ariana looked down at the spot where her cardboard sign had once rested. "It's strange," she whispered. "What is?" "I came here believing I was searching for true love." She looked at him and smiled. "But I found something even more valuable." "What?" She squeezed his hand gently. "Proof that goodness still exists." Malik smiled. "And you proved something to me." "What?" "That sometimes the greatest treasures aren't discovered in boardrooms or bank accounts. They're found in ordinary moments." He looked at the quiet pavement, like sharing a meal with a stranger. Ariana rested her head against his shoulder. Together they stood in silence, watching people come and go. Some smiled. Some hurried home. Others stopped briefly at the outreach center to volunteer or share a meal. The kindness that had begun with one simple decision continued to ripple through countless lives. Because compassion has a way of multiplying. One person inspires another. One generous act creates another. And before long, an entire community begins to change. The story of Malik Carter and Ariana Kingston was never really about a poor mechanic or a billionaire in disguise. It was about two hearts wounded by life in different ways. One had very little money, but never stopped believing in people. The other had more wealth than she could ever spend, but had almost stopped believing in love. Together, they discovered a truth more valuable than any fortune. True wealth is not measured by what you own, but by what you are willing to give when no one is watching. And sometimes, the greatest love stories begin with nothing more than a warm meal, a shared smile, and the courage to treat a stranger like family. Thank you so much for watching. If this story touched your heart, please like this video, leave a comment sharing your thoughts, and subscribe for more unforgettable stories of kindness, love, and life-changing moments. Until next time, remember, one small act of kindness can change someone's life forever. Stay blessed, and we'll see you in the next story.